Hello my witchy friends, welcome to the channel, or welcome back if you are a returning subscriber. My name is Sophie, I'm the Midwest Magician, and today, since it's October, we made it to the best season of the year, thank goodness, I'm so excited. But since it is October, I thought it would be quite appropriate to talk about ancestors. Get out of here. My cat is harassing me. Before we get started, I quickly wanted to thank everybody that has already subscribed to the channel. We just reached our first 1,000 subscribers and I'm so excited. That's such a huge milestone to hit. And I am kind of blown away that 1,000 people like me enough to want to hang out with me. So thank you so much for being here. And if you are not yet subscribed, I would love to personally invite you to click that subscribe button down below. There's absolutely no pressure. You are not obligated to stay here, but I would love to have you as one of my witchy friends. Let's get to what you clicked on the video for, and that is working with our ancestors. I do have a few things to say about ancestors that I haven't really seen a lot of other people touch on. The first is that yes, ancestors are spirits, and that can totally be ooky spooky and you hear things go bump in the night and footsteps, but at the end of the day, they're just people. Believe me, I've been there. It can get creepy. If they're scaring you, tell them. They might not even realize it. Which kind of brings me to my next point, and that is that just like people in your regular life that are living and here in the flesh, you can set boundaries with people that have passed on. If you're working with your ancestors and you feel like they're crossing a boundary, you have to let them know. You set the expectation, you set the boundary, and if they cross that boundary, then you can deal with it appropriately. When I wasn't comfortable with how my interactions with my grandmother-in-law were going, I had to tell her, Nan, please stop knocking yourself off of the gallery wall. And with that expectation, she didn't do it again after having to ask a couple of times, let's be honest. The last one was probably the most firm. But that said, if they are going out of their way to try to get your attention, then you should probably try to find a way to listen to the message that they're trying to give you. That said, I deeply encourage you to set boundaries with your ancestors before you even begin doing any kind of work with them. Again, they're people, so whether they're alive or not, we should be able to communicate and keep it real with them. Briefly, before we dive into actually working with our ancestors, I did just want to go over the types of ancestors that there are. This would be blood ancestors, familial ancestors, land ancestors, marital ancestors, and communal ancestors. So let's talk about blood and familial first. Blood would be obviously those that you are blood related to, and familial would be ones that are a part of your family but not necessarily blood related. A good example of familial ancestors would be adopted ancestors. So if you were adopted into a family, those would still be your ancestors. Family is family no matter where it comes from. And in my case, it would be like step ancestors. I do have a lot of step family, and one could argue that that could be under marital ancestors, but personally I think that it wouldn't be, at least for my definition, because I haven't married into that family. My family has married into that family. So that said, my step-grandparents and things like that would be part of my familial ancestors. Land ancestors would be the people that were once living on the land you inhabit. For me personally, as a US citizen, I fully recognize this land was not mine to begin with, and it was forcibly taken from my land ancestors. These ancestors will only receive offering, thanks, and goodwill prayers from me. I do not feel that it is appropriate to ask anything of them, nor is it appropriate for me to partake in any of their cultural rituals or practices. Not everything is meant for everyone, and I think it is very important to remember that we are not entitled to closed practices, nor are we entitled to any reason why we should not partake in their closed practices. In this case, no means no, and we need to respect that. Marital is pretty self-explanatory. We kind of already briefly talked about it, but this would be the ancestors of the family that you personally marry into. And I know, I feel like a lot of people really underutilize marital ancestors, and I've had nothing but positive experiences, minus the gallery wall, Nan. She hasn't given me an explanation for that. I've tried figuring it out, and we won't go there right now. Finally, the last one is communal. This one might get pushed back from the community, I'm not really sure, but I personally do think it counts. This would be people who were part of a community that you are now in. So a good example for that is most people watching this channel are witches, so I would say that previous witches would be part of my communal ancestry. Another example would be sourdough bakers or hikers for me personally. So there are a lot of ancestors that we could really tap into and work with and honor within communal ancestry. That's just not typically something that I gravitate towards, but I did feel that it was worth mentioning for the purposes of this video. Now that we have that out of the way, I wanted to shift gears and talk about ancestor altars. Do you need an altar to work with your ancestors, a specific ancestor altar? In my opinion, no. I don't think you actually need any tools to start working with your ancestors. I personally do not like how traditional altars are set up, so I have not at all done that for my own ancestor altars. There are, if you are into the traditional altars, don't let me sway you from that at all. You need to do what's going to be best for you. I won't be showing that within my video. There are tons of ancestor videos on YouTube though, and I'm sure there are some that can show you how to set up a traditional ancestor altar. But I'm going to talk about how my ancestor altars look. So behind me, let me see if you can see it from here. I don't think you can. Behind me, right over here, oh wow, oh it autofocuses. This is a new camera, by the way. This is my first video I've ever filmed on this camera. Anyways, wow, that was cool. This is the ancestor portion of my altar. So I do not have a full dedicated altar for my ancestors, but I do have a place where I can come every single day to refresh their offerings. So this portion of my altar is specifically for offerings. All of my ancestors have been made aware that this is where they're going to come, no matter where their photos or any of their altar setups reside in the house. They always know that this is where they come for their offerings. They receive fresh coffee every single morning, and hopefully I haven't done, oh shoot, I should do it today. Hopefully, if I remember, I usually will switch it out for fresh water once I am back home from work. I do also occasionally get chocolate chips. They do occasionally get fresh bread, and I do every single weekend, typically on Saturdays and Sundays when I'm having my coffee over in a different ancestor altar that I will talk to you about in a second. I do light their candle, which they're gonna need a new one pretty soon, and I do also light them an incense so that they can partake in that energy. Aside from that portion of my altar, I do keep a bunch of blood and familial altars around my house. So I know you guys, well, hopefully if you haven't seen my setting up my ancestor wall, it's not really super relevant anymore, although Nan's first time falling off the wall is on that video. So if you want to watch it, I can link it right down below. But I did redo the gallery wall, and we use this as an ancestor altar just right over here. And I love the way it turned out. When the dogs ate something off of it though, they knocked it off the wall and ate it, so I had to fix it a little bit. So the gallery wall would be an example of one of my altars around the house. I have my coffee nook. You know what? We've had coffee and crystals there before, but I will take you over there right now to show you just because it's a fun little field trip. Here is the coffee nook, and I call this a familial altar because these chairs were my step-grandparents. They always take such good care of their stuff, and I just know that they would be so thrilled that their well cared for chairs have a place in my home, and it's somewhere that we really enjoy sitting and having coffee together and communing with each other. I think it's a great way to have an ancestor altar that you can kind of personally go and partake in. I do also have ancestor altars on the bookshelf. I do have an altar. I do also have, they're not traditional, so I don't know what to tell you. That's just what I call them, is an altar. I have one in the entryway for ancestors that I'm still kind of learning and connecting with. They're tricky. My grandmother has this book of ancestry, and now she is an ancestor, so I don't really get to ask her much about it and get direct answers the way you would with a living person. So they came out of that binder, and I do also have a little altar in the kitchen for the woman that I was named after, my great-grandmother. She was really big into baking, so I do like to have her in the kitchen with me while I'm baking. And I've adopted an ancestor. Let me go grab her really quickly. I'll show, if she wants to be on camera, I'll ask her first, but I'll be right back. I'm back. I've got her, okay? I adopted an ancestor. This is my goodwill spirit. She did agree to be on camera. So I got these little picture frames. Oh, maybe she doesn't want to be on camera. I don't know. I got these picture frames at Goodwill, and while I was in the store, I was going to take her out and leave her there. And as I was taking it out, I got hit. Oh, I got hit with this immense, deep sadness because she didn't want to be left there. She didn't want to be forgotten and thrown away, and someone had already left her at Goodwill. So I brought her home. I put her on my bedside table, and she is my goodwill spirit. I don't know her name. There's no name on the back that I can recall. Maybe there is, but I don't think that's English. She lives with me now, and she sits on my bedside table, and she keeps me safe when I'm sleeping, or at least I'd like to think so. That's kind of the way that I like to set up my ancestor altars. I feel like keeping them as a part of the home decor kind of integrates them into my day-to-day life, so they're not kept separate from my living life. They are a part of it. They are my family, they're in my home, and I'm coexisting with them, and they're interacting with me on my day-to-day life, and that's just kind of the way that I like to work with my ancestors. So really, the altars and the way that you choose to honor your ancestors is going to be entirely up to you, up to your lifestyle, and how you want to incorporate your ancestors within your day-to-day life. I know I'm gonna get some questions about what to do about ancestors that you don't want to work with, that you're not interested in, that might have had a bad history. Again, I'd like to briefly touch on what we talked about before diving in. We need to set our boundaries. If there are ancestors within your past that you don't want to come forward into your home, you need to set that boundary before you even begin your ancestor work. If there are ancestors that you do not want to associate, you need to make it known. You don't need to have their name. It would be helpful to have their names, but you don't need them. What I personally have done, making it known when I gave my first offering that I was only extending this offering to benevolent spirits that were within my ancestry, that had my best interest at heart, and they needed to align with my personal morals and values. I did also set the expectation that it would not be okay to bring any kind of fear within my home. I don't want to feel scared working with my ancestors. I don't want my pets to be bothered. I don't want my husband to feel spooked out. So that was something that I had established well in advance. I made it known right from the beginning that I would not be willing to work with ancestors or honor ancestors that have done people immense harm. So if that was something that was concerning to you, if ancestors that might have been, I don't like the word problematic, but I don't have a better word at this time. So if you were worried about ancestors that are problematic coming forward, set that boundary far in advance and do not let them cross that boundary. So for me, communicating with ancestors has proven to be incredibly easy. I quite literally just talk to them. It felt so silly at first. I felt like I was just talking to a completely empty room. But the way that I got started was announcing that their offerings were for them. So as I would go every single morning and place their coffee, I would let them know, I made you this hot, fresh cup of coffee. Please come and partake in it. And now every morning to this day, I still will announce that their coffee is hot and fresh and ready for them. And at this point, it doesn't feel silly anymore. It honestly just feels conversational. I'll come into this room and I will open up the curtains and I'll say good morning. I'll say good morning to the house. I'll say good morning to the plants, and I'll say good morning to my ancestors. It really just feels like a conversation, like when you have a friend over and you're like, here's your cup of coffee. All that to say, it can start so simple, and it might not feel witchy or energetically really like anything at first, but if you keep with it and if you continue to give offerings and continue to let them know, I'll refresh this tomorrow or I'll refresh this in a week. If you continue to open up that communication and just talk with them, it will start to feel a lot more natural. And another way that you can very easily start to connect with your ancestors and start communicating with them is by talking to them in the car. I personally have such a long commute, so if I want to catch up with an ancestor, I will simply call them into the car with me, and as we're driving, I'll let them know everything that I've been wanting to tell them about. I'll tell them, you know, what's been happening in my life, what my goals are, and things like that. It's really just like having a conversation with a family member on the phone. Just in this case, I'm alone in the car, and if someone looks over, it probably just looks like I'm talking on the phone. It can be really hard and challenging to have conversations with deceased loved ones or ancestors when there are people home. So if that's something that makes you feel a little weird or uncomfortable, I really do recommend just chatting with them in the car. To go about receiving messages from your ancestors, you can really do this a few different ways. Personally, I just like to do whatever divination method that is the easiest for me. So typically that's going to be my tarot or oracle cards if I do actually need a message from them. My favorite way to communicate with them is using the spirit board, but I do not have one. I was looking for one when I was in Salem and I just didn't see one that I liked. So I'm still on the hunt. If anyone has any recommendations, let me know. But you could use, you know, the spirit board, you could use tarot or oracle, you could use a pendulum with a pendulum board, you can use really just basic playing cards too. Or something that I personally really like to do is ask for specific signs. I think I talked about this in another video, I can't remember which one. I had asked one October driving home from work, I was really missing my grandpa, and I called him into the car and I said, if you are here, if you can see me, can you please send me this one very specific, very specific stray cat that I had not seen in months. And lo and behold, who is scratching on my back door as soon as nightfall comes? It is that same cat. So they will come through, they will show you. They will show you that they're there, and they will send you specific signs if you ask for them. Please be patient with them though. Like a couple of hour turnaround time was like, that was rapid fire. I don't know if it's gonna be like that for every single one. Or on the other hand, you could also ask them for some kind of sign or confirmation that would be very specific to them. So you could say, show me, you know, show me that you're around, using something that I would only know is from you. And maybe they'll send you a bird or whatever. You'll know it when you see it. When it comes to working with ancestors on spells or manifestations, you have to remember again that they are people and they do have the right to say no to working with you on spell work. I personally would not call my Catholic grandfather here to do spell work for me. Rather, if I need his help, I'm just going to flat out ask him for help. That's something you can do as well. But my main point here is that free will does exist whether you're living or not. So make sure you do get confirmation of a definite yes if you are planning to work with your ancestors in your spell work. I can't foresee a lot of ancestors saying no, but I can't speak to other people's ancestors, only my own. I give them offerings and they know they can expect offerings, so I don't really foresee them saying no to doing spell work with me. It's not necessarily something I feel like I would ask them. Rather, I would just specifically ask them for help with whatever it is that I am working on or need their assistance with. So I think that's the majority of what I wanted to say for this video about working with our ancestors. It is getting dark outside and I kind of want to get cozy and watch. I don't know if you guys saw my sweater, but I want to watch over the garden wall. If you have not seen it, I recommend it. But I'm ready to go watch over the garden wall. I really hope that you were able to take away something from this video. I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you did make it this far in the video, can you leave a little ghost emoji down below for me? I always love to see who has watched all the way to the end. That's all I have for right now. Thank you very much for spending your time with me. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you very soon. Bye.